Welcome to another episode of The Inquisitive Analyst. I'm your host, Marcus Udekeng, and it's the show where we chat about business analysis and project management and the triumphs, challenges, and contributions within that field, within those fields. It's inspiring, it's upbeat, and of course, it's inquisitive. My guest today is one of the contributors to the Scrum software development method and one of the founders of the Scrum Alliance. He has authored 3 books on Agile, and he is also the founder of Mountain Goat Software, Better User Stories Video Training, and the Agile Mentors Community. Please help me welcome to today's show, Mike Cohn. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Marcus, thanks for having me here today.
Oh, you're very welcome indeed. Now, I thought maybe I'd ask you a few questions and start off with kind of the obvious, which is your field, Agile Scrum. How did you get involved with the Agile Scrum, and what was your path to success?
I got started in it basically before I got going. I got started doing Scrum in October of 1994, which is about 6.5 years or so before Agile Manifesto, and before that became a big thing. What happened was I was a project manager, kind of a classic project manager, and was getting more and more complicated projects to run, bigger projects, more complicated projects, and it was getting harder to be successful. And so I needed to find a way to be successful as the scope of the projects got bigger, as the teams got bigger, everything else. And so I kind of looked around, read everything I could find on various different processes. One of the books I read was a book called Wicked Problems, Righteous Solutions. It had come out in 1990. Now, again, this is October of 94. This book had come out in 1990. I bought it in 1990 from a mail order book club. This is 1990, way before Amazon. And so I was in this book club where they'd send you a list of books on computer science, and you could pick one a month, and they'd send it to you and charge you. And I bought this book, and it was the world's ugliest book. I mean, it looked like it'd been mimeographed, pages were crooked. I mean, it was only like $10 so it wasn't worth mailing back. I just threw it in the back of my closet. And then when it was necessary, 4 years later, I read the book because it was about project management and alternative ways to manage projects, basically. And it had about a 3-page description of Scrum in there, and said, this had been done in hardware projects. Be interesting if somebody tried this in software. And I thought, wow, awesome. And so I gave that a try on that project starting in October of 94, and it worked phenomenally well. So I just kind of stuck with that.
Awesome. That's cool. It sounds like a great, awesome story. You should probably make that into a movie, I think. Something like that. So,
I'll have Brad Pitt play me, right there.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah, no doubt. So I want to get your brain for a few minutes on a few Agile items. So let's start off with user stories. What are some problems that you see with writing user stories, and how can we try and overcome them?
The biggest problem with user stories are people who learn about them and think everything has to be a user story. Right. I'll have people ask me, it's like, we're building this system. It has no users. Maybe it's like, a satellite or something, right? And it's like, how do we write user stories for it? And it's like, you don't, right? The user stories, they're a great technique. They're absolutely wonderful if you have users and those users differ in meaningful ways, right? If all your users are the same, you don't really need a user story. And so the big problem is, probably the biggest two are both related, people thinking everything has to be a user story. And then the second one is people just getting too caught up in a template for user stories. And you've probably seen it where we write user stories as a type of user, I want this so that. And that's a great way to write things, but it's not the only way to write things. And so people get addicted to that. And, I kind of tell them, like, go back and look at my user stories applied book on this. I don't use that template once. I think I mentioned at the very end of the book, right? But none of the examples are in that template. And, people read that, and everybody started putting things in that template and and it's great, but it's not for everything. So those are the two biggest ones.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard that many times. There's so many different ways of doing user stories, and you don't have to stick to that method that you've described. So we see some business analysts, a lot of business analysts now, they want to become product owners. They're moving into that role. Any recommendations on how a business analyst can best prepare to become a successful product owner?
I love that you're saying that, because it's exactly the same thing I teach when I'm talking in, especially like a product owner training course. Because product owners, like, in my product owner class, I'll often be business analyst or a product owner who has an analyst, and they'll want to know what the difference is. And I think the biggest difference with the two roles is that product owners prioritize the work and business analysts don't really prioritize. And so a typical relationship would be a product owner saying, hey, analyst, go research this area, write up all the requirements. Agile, probably in user stories, but go write up all the requirements. And then they come back, and the product owner is going to be the one who retains the authority to prioritize. But you know who they're going to rely on. They're going to ask the analyst, hey, which ones of these are most important? Which ones could we skip, right? But ultimate authority with the product owner. And so the biggest advice on an analyst becoming a product owner is just kind of wait. I don't mean that in a bad way, but just kind of wait. It's going to happen because the product owner is going to change jobs, right? They're going to move on to another company or a different project or whatever. Well, the next product owner is going to be the analyst, right? And so it's just, I don't mean wait and hey, wait, your turn will come, but it's going to happen, right? They're the natural person for that job. And so it's just a matter of, just practicing your skills, just get good at the things you're already doing. Think perhaps about how you would like to prioritize. What do you see your product owner doing that's frustrating to teams? What would you do differently when you're in that position? But product owner is a really tough job. So a lot of product owners rely very heavily on their analysts. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for analysts to assert themselves in a good way, assert themselves into helping their PO, right? What can I do to help you better? And if the PO starts saying, help me with the priorities over here, why don't you run the meeting where we write product backlog items, user stories for this section? Do it, right? And those are all going to lead into becoming a product owner as soon as it's possible.
Yeah, product owners can't do everything themselves, no doubt. They definitely need
big job.
No, it's huge, most definitely. What are some ways that Mountain Goat software helps organizations introduce Agile to their business? That's assuming that it's a business that doesn't have Agile, right?
Yeah, we do a lot of different things. We go into organizations and can help by training their staff. We either do that by going into a company or going in virtually today. You do a Zoom thing with company employees, or we do public classes. We have normally like 1 or 2 a week where we're doing a public class where anybody can sign up. And then we do engagements where we'll help a company figure out how to become Agile. I like to create what we call a transition backlog of the things that we like to apply Agile to getting Agile, right? You don't want to do Agile in a waterfall way. So we have a transition backlog. What are the things we have to do to become Agile? And so we'll work with organizations to try to create that transition backlog. The thing that we do that's different is we don't want to be there forever. And maybe that's a bad business decision, but it's my personal interest, right? I don't want to go become basically an employee, right? So, we go in, we teach them how to do it, and then we move on to the next client. We're always there if they need support, but we're not the type of company that goes in and it's like, hey, we'll be here with you for a year, just doing it for you. That's not right for them, and it's no fun for us. So
yeah, that's true. Scrum Master is the big thing. A lot of project managers becoming Scrum Masters. I guess I could ask this one of two ways. Where does the Scrum Master fit in the Agile project manager roles and responsibility, or maybe it's the other way around? Like, how does this kind of differ from traditional project management?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first got started doing Scrum, I told you that story about October 1994, project really got going in kind of early 95. And this title Scrum Master did not exist. We didn't have that title back then. I still needed people to run my Scrum project. So guess who I hired? I hired project managers, right? Now, in my mind, there's always been two different types of project managers. There were the type that always knew it was about empowering the team, helping the team, removing impediments to their progress. It was always about helping the team. And then there was the other type of project manager that was the person with the clipboard. And it's like, hey, your name's next to this task. It says Thursday. I don't even understand the task. What's your corrective action plan, right? I hired the good type of, right? I hired the good type of project manager, right? And none of the bad ones are listening to you, right? I mean, they're not on your podcast, right? They're not going to listen to this. Well, they're not trying to get better, right? They're about, I'm a project manager for the prestige, right? I get to tell people what to do or something, right? The good ones were the ones I hired. And, like most of us would search for. I didn't always get lucky, didn't always hire the good ones, but they were Scrum Masters. I mean, they were working like Scrum Masters. They were about empowering the team, anticipating problems, stepping aside and letting the team make decisions. So I don't want to say a project manager is just, or a Scrum Master is just an an agile project manager.
Mhm.
So I think there are things that the good Scrum Masters will do that get a little bit beyond that, but it's very much in that direction, right? The good project managers have always been kind of in the direction of being a good Scrum Master. They're the type that become great Scrum Masters.
That's good to know. Poker planning, or planning poker rather. Maybe you can explain a bit about what planning poker is, first of all, and then what's the best time to initiate planning poker? Does it really work? Does planning poker really work?
Yeah, I believe it does. There's some research that's been done by Magne Jorgensen, a researcher out of the Simula Research Lab in University of Oslo, and he's looked at things like this and research things like structured conversation leads to better estimates, things like this. So I do think it works well. The idea behind planning poker is it's somewhat similar, and your audience probably know this technique, wideband Delphi, as a way of estimating. And in the ancient Delphi estimating approach, we would each write down estimates, give them to some coordinator, and they would kind of track things. Wideband Delphi added some communication to that. And so planning poker is kind of an evolution of those. Now, those were coming out of the 1940s. So planning poker, 50-year newer innovation of that. And the idea is that we have people get together in a room on a conference call, talk about an item, and then all at once say how big they think it is. Got the name planning poker from a guy named James Grenning. He's the guy that actually invented the basic approach. And so we'd have people with poker cards, right? And, we just used to do index cards, and people would get a big black marker and write down 1, 2, 3 on them, stuff like that. And then you'd hold up your number. And if everyone agreed, we'd write that number down and move on. And this is where it was similar to wideband Delphi, is if we didn't agree, we'd talk about it. So if you think it's a 10 and I think it's a 5, let's talk, right? Let's see why we disagree. And, maybe I say why I think it's a 5 and I talk you up, right? You had a 10, I had a 5, but when I say it's a 5, it's complicated because of X. And you're like, wow, I didn't even think of X. I thought it was a 10 without X, right? And so maybe you move to a 15 and I come up to a 10, right? Because what you said, and we're still not there. We have to repeat that. But it was that collaboration, that talking about it and seeing what people disagreed on and why we thought it was big and how we thought it compared to other items. So that's what planning poker is. Normally, planning poker is paired with what is known as relative estimating. Doesn't have to be, but most commonly it's paired with relative estimating. So rather than saying 5 and 10 days in my example, we might be saying 5 and 10, meaning this will take twice as long as that, right? And if you think about pages in a book, right? Pages in a book is a meaningless metric, right? Or you talk about a large print book or a small print book is, Harry Potter or a mathematical treatise, what type of book. Yeah. And so, for me to say I read 30 pages an hour, it's like, yeah, what type of book, right? It doesn't mean anything, right? And so relative estimating is normally used as part of planning poker, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I noticed from your website too that you can buy you're selling planning poker cards at cost price, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we sell them at cost. People, it hasn't been as much with the kind of the virtual Zoom world of the last year, the work from home world, but there's just something more fun about doing it when you're holding like real poker cards, right? And so we started printing those up, like 15 years ago or something. And I like having fun at work, right? I want to get work done. I mean, it's part of, it's work, you want to do it, but you want to have fun while you're doing it. And it's just something a little bit more fun when you're having the poker cards. And it's always kind of fun when some boss from another department walks by and, sees that and then goes to the development boss, like, your team was playing poker in the room. Oh, no, they're estimating.
They're
right?
estimating. Good quality cards too. That's awesome. Agile Mentors Community. Can you explain a bit about your Agile Mentors Community? How does it work? The value it provides its users?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. I was getting frustrated a handful of years ago because I was seeing too many Agile coaches, great term, Agile coach, but they were just coaches, right? And they were not helping their teams as much as they could. They were not providing guidance. And they were embracing a little too much of the idea that a coach doesn't tell you how to do something, right? And there are times when a team comes to you and says, how long should our sprints be? And they really just want an answer. They don't want you to say, well, what do you think the drawbacks of 4-week sprints would be? What do you think the drawback of 1-week sprints would be? What do you think we should do? And they just like, what's your recommendation? Of all the things you've seen, what do you advise? And there's times to answer that. There's times not to. And so I saw a few too many coaches who were sticking as coaches, not mentors. And so we wanted to kind of reinvigorate some of the idea that if you've been there for a while, you probably do have some advice and you can mentor someone.
Mhm.
And so we created this this community called the Agile Mentors Community. And the idea there was, I love our motto. Our motto is mentor, be mentored, meaning there's somebody that can benefit from you mentoring them, and then there's somebody that you can learn from. And I've been doing this a long time, but every time I log into there, I learn something from our members. And there's just so many people there that are smart about this, doing it in different contexts. I learn all sorts of stuff there. And so it's really about being able to give advice, learn how to help your team, things like that. We talk about coaching too. I mean, coaching is always going to be part of it, but there is a time when it's worth advising someone, not just listening and helping them figure it out. And so the value is that we have just the best community. Our community moderator is Stacy Ackerman, and she's wonderful and is very friendly, useful community. Everything that gets asked there gets answered. People stay friendly. It's just been great. And that's to her credit. And so it's a community where people can talk. We also do a lot of video events. I think we just did one today, a lean coffee, where we had members come in and talk about issues. Yesterday, I did a live Q&A session for about 90 minutes where people can, ask me any questions they want. So if they want, kind of free coaching advice and just if they're part of a members, it's just part of the service. They just ask me questions. And so we got one of our other, my senior VP in Mount Goat, Brian is doing another one next week. So it's about helping people to get better at it. We started it as a way to extend beyond our courses, right? We do a course. I don't care how good your course is, it's not enough, right? People are going to have questions, right? And they can't ask those questions in the moment because they don't have them yet. They learn them once they get back. So I wanted some way to sort of continue to help people beyond classes. That's how we started the Agile Mentors Community.
Yeah, I like that. I used to teach at college for a few years, and I always said to my students, I'm one person teaching like 20, 30 people. I'm learning more from all of you guys. So let's switch it up. Let's switch it up and ask questions to each other, because I need 30 of you to learn from 30 of you, type of thing, right?
Yep.
So
yeah. I had somebody give me advice years ago that I think was just totally wrong advice. Curious on your take on this as a former professor, but his advice was never ask a classic question you don't know the answer to. And I thought, it was like, how boring, right? It's like, okay, I'm the one getting paid to be here, but I want to learn too, right? And so I ask questions, all sorts of questions I don't have the answer to, right? And I want to know what they think, right? What have you done? What's worked for this? And I love getting to learn in my own classes.
Oh yeah, yeah. You never stop learning, no doubt. You're a proponent of Scrum stand-up meetings where the team actually physically stands up. Now, why do you emphasize that the team should physically stand up during the meetings?
That might be something that we can start to emphasize less these days, because stand-up meetings have become so common. I mean, they're written about in the Wall Street Journal, and I've heard them on NPR, all sorts of things, right? They're covered everywhere. So maybe we can stop a little bit, but as they got started, it was very unusual to be in a meeting where you stood up. And so just the act of standing up was unique. It was just different, right? I mean, it'd be like, let's have a meeting where we all pat our heads for the whole meeting, right? It's just different, right? You're aware of a difference, and it kept the meeting shorter, right? And so I think it was the benefit of doing something different that helped, and it was the benefit of standing up as a way to keep the meeting short. When we sit down, we start talking about, I don't know, did you watch The Bachelor last night? Or, how's your favorite sports team doing? And, we just have those conversations, and those are fun, and those are part of work. I talked about it, wanting to enjoy work, but when we have those meetings, those conversations a lot, we're adding 5, 10, 15 minutes to every meeting. And, I'd rather get in the meeting and get done and then go have fun talking to somebody out after the meeting, right? But if you and I were talking about sports, or you and I were talking about Bachelor, we're boring somebody else in the meeting, right? And so just get in, get it done, and move on. And one of the things that was powerful for me about the stand-up aspect of these, I was working with a team, this is probably 10, 12 years ago. And there was a guy in a wheelchair, and for the daily stand-up, he stood up. And he was one of those, he's in a wheelchair, but, he can stand up, but it's like, really painful. And he can't really walk, but he can stand up out of the wheelchair. And he did, right? And that was just, it was above and beyond what was necessary, right? But the rest of the team was standing up. He was going to stand up. And then I was like 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm with just the exact opposite team, right? And one of the issues the Scrum Master dealing with is one of the team members who kind of refuses to stand up, right? I can give my update just as well seated as standing, right? And he's of course the most senior person on the team, and he's trying to demonstrate he doesn't have to play by the same rules that you do, right? And so she finally gets him to stand up, and now what he does is he kind of sits on a file cabinet, right? So, he's kind of at the same height as the rest of us, but he's got his butt on a file cabinet. It's like, this doesn't count, right? This doesn't count, right? And all I have to tell you is those two stories, and which of those two teams was more successful, right? It's just so obvious. And it's not even about the standing up. It's about the bonding that we're all doing the same thing, right? And this guy's standing up as to demonstrate his membership in the team, right? This guy in this wheelchair standing up. That was very powerful for me to see. And then especially 2 weeks later to see the opposite behavior.
Yeah, no, it's truly inspiring. If a guy in a wheelchair can get up, no doubt. I just, a couple of questions before we close. If someone wants to get into Agile and they haven't been introduced to it yet, what's quick tips, 1 or 2 quick tips for someone to enter into the Agile world?
I would say one thing, I don't like being here to promote anything. That's not what I'm doing, but we have a set of free videos at scrumfoundations.com. I mean, just go watch those. It's like an hour of videos. Super well produced. I have this like awesome editor, video animator do stuff on there. So they're really nice videos. I would watch those. And then I think the way to get started, right, if you have any ability to introduce this with your team, is don't feel like you have to go all the way, right? Just, start with iterations, start with stand-ups, right? Who's going to object to let's get together once a day for 10 or 15 minutes and talk? Well, actually plenty of people will. So do it 3 days a week, right? Just, hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, let's just check in right after lunch. Let's just everybody get together and talk about how things are going, right? Or in the morning, whenever is good. And iterations, right? Nobody can really debate the value of iterations, right? There is plenty of room to debate whether Agile is a good idea. Absolutely plenty of room to debate that, right? I think 4-week iterations are too short. They should be 3 months. I'm going to argue with that guy. I mean, I'm going to respect that opinion. I'm going to, be in favor of the shorter iterations, but I can buy that. But nobody's going to tell me we should never iterate. We should just, big bang waterfall, one big delivery on, the whole system, on anything non-trivial. And so introduce iterations, introduce stand-ups to a project, just do those type of things. Then start doing, add very incrementally, add a planning meeting. Hey, at the start of iterations, let's get there for an hour and just talk about what we want to get done in the iteration. Right. So I'd go at it very incrementally in an environment like that. Pick the low risk things, that kind of easy wins, and just kind of dip your toes into it that way. Fantastic.
This has been a splendid conversation, Mike. I really appreciate your time. And if anyone from the audience wants to get in touch with you, what's a great way to do that?
Probably just through our website, mountaingoatsoftware.com is the easiest way to find us. We've got all sorts of stuff up there. So I'd go mountaingoatsoftware.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your time, Mike. This has been splendid, and have yourself a great and wonderful day.
Thanks, Marcus. You too.
All right. Thank you.